What a pleasure to start this day to welcome you here, all of you here. You are truly, truly welcome. And we'll begin with a short prayer. So, hands on your heart. And if you'd like, you may close your eyes. Inhale, exhale slowly. Hover over me, God. Fill in the grace gaps for me when I am incapable of compassion and kindness. Help me live in harmony with nature, to do no harm to my fellow creatures, and give me the grace of courage to do more for others each day and to worry less about what tomorrow might bring. Grant me the wisdom to release what I must and the courage to move into the unknown with faith that I will be shown my way each day. Grant me the grace of trust in my own inner journey. Help me rely more and more upon my inner guidance and trust that I'm hearing you clearly. And very gently, you may open your eyes. I'm going to begin by reading a few lines from Malala Yousafzai, who received the 2014 Nobel Peace Prize at the age of 17. And this is from her autobiography, I Am Malala, the girl who stood up for education and changed the world. So she was shot by the Taliban on her school bus and her friends too. And she writes, "They thought that the bullet would silence us, but they failed. And out of that silence came thousands of voices, and nothing changed in my life. But this weakness, fear, hopelessness died. I am the same Malala. My hopes are the same. My dreams are the same. I'm focusing on women's rights and girls' education because they are suffering the most. There was a time when women social activists asked men to stand for their rights, but this time we will do it by ourselves." It's just like they tried to shoot me, and now instead of hopelessness, I'm really in the game. And it's so beautiful to have that level of suffering inspire such courage in a teenager. Something happens to us sometimes when we suffer really deeply, as she did, when there is such a profound, nearly dying situation that the other part of us that is undying, unborn, untouched by all this praise and blame, gain and loss. That's what Buddha refers to in all the texts when he says, "O nobly born, you who are the sons and daughters of the Buddha, remember who you truly are. Remember your timeless nature." And something happened to her where she knew that what happened to her body is part of the human incarnation, that who she is so much bigger than that. And somehow, grace carried this teenage girl in this way. So, what is grace? And how does grace work? How do I know if I've ever had an experience of grace in my life? Now, one way to understand grace is that it is a mystical force, not an intellectual or physical power. It's a mystical substance. What is mystical? So I'm going to spend a few minutes describing mysticism and get it out of the thinking that it's magical because the word is used quite often. But it's really one of those rich words that opens up a universe, one of those rare words that is like a flying carpet, that once you get on it and you really understand what it means, it takes you to another realm within yourself. So, mysticism is the study of the experiences of the sacred. So, the difference, in a very simple way to understand the difference between, for example, studying religion and what mystics experienced, is the difference between studying parenthood and becoming a parent. And honestly, I don't know one person who's become a parent and who has said to me that what they read about is exactly the same thing they experienced once they became a parent. That they knew exactly how to become the parent and nothing changed. In fact, everything changed because they experienced childbirth, because they experienced having a child of their own. A love, a quality of love was animated within them for this human being that no book, no manual could have provided. No amount of discussion, no amount of theory, no amount of, well, this is how much I will love this child, or this is how I will love this child. This is how I will discipline this child. This is the kind of parent, I will never get angry. I will never be stressed. I will never do anything stupid with this child. And then they have this child who's a complete surprise package to them, none of which they were prepared for or could have anticipated it. The experience changes them and they become devoted to this child. And devotion is not something we read about. It just emerges in us and it takes over. And if someone says, show me this love and devotion, put it in your hands, well, so what mysticism is, a mystery of being immersed in a power that is real and much greater than us. It's the source of all life. And it's not something that logic or rational mind can explain. In fact, our capacity to make sense of things is quite limited. We can't even make sense of half the choices we make. How rational are we when we are angry? Or sometimes you would have noticed, we come back home from a store and look at something we bought and wonder, what was I thinking? We have moments of logic and rational thought, but most often we are driven by impulse and responses. How often, really, think about it, how often we respond to commercials? And we think, oh, maybe I do need that. Maybe I really do need that. Or maybe that person's right. I mean, we are so susceptible to so much, to absolute nonsense. And yet we think we are rational. What we think we are versus what we are is quite astonishing. And what we think are the contents of our reality, of what could happen, what might happen, what is possible. And when someone says, well, that's not possible, how do we know what's possible? How do we know? Do we have the book of all things possible and all things impossible? No. We just have had a tiny drop of experience in our tiny little neighborhood, in our tiny little life. We have no idea of what is possible in this vast range of life. So, what mystics experience is what is possible. when they slip out of this limited five sensory world and experience the realm of the invisible. Now, having said that, all of us, we experience the invisible all the time. We are always connected to the internet, right? The fact that we are having the Zoom session, we are all online, connected from different parts of the world, or we are always sending emails with a touch of a finger on a keyboard. We don't see any of that at all, do we? But if we were talking to someone from 30, 40, 50 years ago, and we said to them, I can send a message in the blink of an eye, and I just hit a button and off it goes. And it can go to 1 million people, or it could go to 4 million, it could go to 50 million people. All I have to do is press send, and it just flies through the air. And if they said, "What are you talking about? You can't do that. It's impossible." Right? Not in the realm of the invisible. It just goes like that. This vast nothingness is filled with life. It's filled with electronic life, invisible life, and it's filled with sacred life. And it's just easier for us to believe in the internet than the internet. The internet is filled with sacred life. What makes that different from the internet is there's different ingredients in the internet. There's sacred wiring versus technical wiring. Technical wiring doesn't require faith. It doesn't require conscience of sort. I mean, with the internet, one can negotiate one's conscience, right? One can decide this really isn't a bad thing. I've heard so many comments of people who would say, there's nothing wrong with this, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with sending out things that aren't true, or fake news, or lying, or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. They negotiate their conscience. But there's a whole lot wrong with that. You're using your life force to distort truth. And anytime we distort truth, there's something wrong with that. Because truth is the greatest power in the human experience. Truth, not love. Truth is the game changer. As soon as we encounter a truth, it changes everything in our life. Everything. Because all the illusions we have that are impacted by that truth instantaneously evaporate. I'm just going to give you some examples so that it becomes more clear. We have these grand illusions that we hold on to. Just to give an example, there's this illusion of permanence versus the truth of impermanence. In our perception, things always stay the same. Everything is permanent, stable, long lasting. And our mind is so tight, so fixed, so closed that we ignore the truth of impermanence. And that is one of the major reasons we have so much anguish and difficulty facing change in our lives, because we so desperately want everything to continue as it is. We have this tendency to grasp. We want to hold on to things that we need. And even when it comes to our death, we live as if our life will go on forever. Even though intellectually at some level we know we are going to pass. But what is the truth? The truth is impermanence and continual change. And this truth happens around us and within us 24/7, never stopping for an instant. The seasons are changing, the days change, the hours of the day change. We ourselves change all along. We experience so many changes from moment to moment, and yet we hold on to the illusion of impermanence. To give you another example, we all have this dream of a soulmate, finding love in another person to be complete, versus the truth. And the truth is that we need to become our own soulmate. To be whole, to be complete, we need to learn to become our own soulmate. And then we radiate love to everyone we touch. Another illusion we have of the smaller sense of self, I, me, myself, versus the truth of the big energy field of the soul energy. We're all connected. There is no us versus them. There are no strangers. Another illusion that we have, the illusion of ownership of our bodies, our material possessions, our knowledge, our abilities, versus the truth that we are just guardians of all the gifts and our countless blessings that we receive, and we must keep them in circulation. And as soon as we encounter some of these truths, all these illusions instantaneously evaporate. We can't hold them anymore. That's what Buddha says, it's an illusion. It'll go in a blink of an eye, the big lie. Now, I've just given you a few examples. There's so many more. But it takes so much energy to hold on to a lie, to all these lies. So much energy. We have to keep perpetuating, and it keeps draining our system. It'll drain you, drain you, drain you. Truth is effortless. We don't have to hold on to it. It just flows. It just does its thing. It just constantly moves the wheels within us of revelation. Well, if this is true, what else is true? What is the great teaching? It takes a whole lot of effort to stay in darkness because we have to shut down our intuitive system. We have to shut down the mystical realm. So let's go back to now, what is grace? Grace is this mystical substance. And think of it like this, there's eau de toilette, there's cologne, and there's perfume. They're all the same, essential substance of life force. And eau de toilette is what's generated by life itself, just generated. And then cologne is generated by our good actions. It's self-generating by our good thoughts. And then there's perfume. We can't generate perfume. It's administered from above. And because it's so strong, it kind of just dilutes into cologne. And then we contribute that to the general toilet water. And perfume is administered. It comes at times when we've exhausted our own cologne supply. When we've exhausted our resources, that is when we get grace supplies. When we've exhausted our own resources, when we've gotten to the point where we think, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I just don't know how. And then a thought occurs to us, but I will get through this. That's one way grace comes in. The grace of hope, the grace of tranquility, the grace of endurance. Just that extra perfume. An experience of grace does not explode into our life in ways that are obvious. Usually, it is not until time passes, maybe a day, a week, or even longer, that you realize that something slightly out of the ordinary has occurred. And that something out of the ordinary can be subtle, such as the way in which you step out of your comfort zone to assist a stranger. And I'm emphasizing on the word spontaneously. Grace is a subtle force, a divine power beyond the grasp of reason. All thoughts and ideas that strike you out of the blue, that change the course of your schedule or compel you to do something unusual, and that in general serve a positive end you could not have planned. Maybe that is the work of grace. That is the work of grace. Our lives have been touched by grace more times and in more ways that can be counted. Another example, another download of spontaneous grace happens this way. You're about to explode. You're just about to say something awful. And you hear a voice that says, "Are you sure you want to say that? Do that? Because you're going to regret this one and there's no going back." So instead of saying it, you just think, "I'm out of here," and you walk out of the room. But it saves you. It saves one of the most precious relationships you'll ever have. And then once you're outside and you cool off and you think, "Thank God I didn't say this, I didn't do that." And you may never ever connect that to really, "Thank you, God, thank you for intervening. Thank you for shutting my mouth, for shutting me down. Thank you." Another way grace intervenes is doing things we'll never know. They are the handiwork of grace, stalling our car, preventing an accident we'll never know might have happened. Grace always moves us from a moment of exhaustion or blindness or the need to protect us to the next stage. It's a transformational force that takes us from one condition to a better one, to a better thought, to a better place, to a better moment, to a better feeling. Sometimes we might judge somebody, we might think that this person is so, and then you stop. And then you stop and think, how do I know what's going on with that person? Again, it's the grace of God that whispers to you to stop. And you stop. We will never see the impact our judgments have on others. But all we have to do is think, how would I like to be judged by such a cruel thought? And that's how grace operates. It operates like fresh air coming into the smoke-filled, crowded thoughts in our mind. It's a single clean message that has the power to engage all our sense and direct us to a more empowered, healthy choice. It's a holy power message that comes into our life during those times when we are consciously or unconsciously vulnerable, frightened, confused, lonely, or in need of immediate direction. And the purpose of these transmissions of grace is to facilitate the most empowered choice we can make for ourselves in that moment. It's the way the universe assists us to shift our inner view, our attitude, our fears. Guidance and grace support our well-being at all times. Now, grace and guidance are two sides of the same coin. They are infusions of a higher power or holy light. that assists us in making a transition to a higher or more light filled inner state of consciousness. And then from there, we are then capable of an empowered decision. So, grace is a mystical substance, an extra light, a type of light that takes the shape of the assistance we need at the time. It could be compassion, it could be endurance, it could be patience, it could be courage, it could be wisdom, it could be faith, it could be understanding. But grace pours into us like an extra dose of something we need that we cannot generate at the time. Grace comes in, and it's not that we notice, oh my God, I'm just getting an infusion of grace. But that we perhaps notice that something happened, a thought came to me, that as a result of it, I was able to endure something that for a moment I thought was unendurable. A thought came to you, said, you will get through this. I will get through this. I always get through things. That somehow you were reminded of your inner courage at a time when you really didn't have the strength or the stamina to remind yourself of that. So, grace is that sort of subtle force. It takes us from one situation in which we are losing power, and it transfers us into another situation. It transforms the situation into something more positive. And it's not necessarily that it's just brimming with positive, but it's enough to get you by. Now, grace also pours into us when we require assistance. And it especially pours into us when we require assistance to better the lives of other people or even one person. I was also listening to Carolyn Myss. She's a medical intuitive, and she was sharing um, when she was writing one of her books, which is titled Invisible Acts of Power. That book broke her wide open, because so many people who had been homeless wrote to her and said, I will tell you why I'm not homeless. And I'm going to share with you about this one person who wrote to her and said, I am not homeless because someone was not afraid to touch me when I was filthy, and said, I will pray for you and you are going to get out of this. And therein was grace, the grace of hope transferred into that person. Now, grace does not require a crisis or a dire situation to flow into our life. Grace also comes into our life during times of reflection and contemplation. Often in times of creativity, the grace of inspiration pours into our souls. Or there could be times when we are gazing into the calmness of nature. The grace of tranquility descends upon us. With or without our asking for these acts of mystical intervention, the graces of the divine flow freely and abundantly into our lives. And grace emerges out of our own inner work and healing the unhealed parts of ourselves. It also comes through prayer and discovering that we rely more on truth than on fear. Now, prayer is like turning a tributary of grace into a river that flows into us without obstacles. Now, to give you more examples of grace filled moments that are present in all our lives, you know, a reconciliation between you and someone you hold dear that you thought could never happen. It's truly an act of grace. Running into someone you haven't seen in a long time, who's especially dear to you, it's far more than a sweet coincidence. It's also an act of grace. Even remembering that today is someone's birthday and realizing how hurt that person would be had you forgotten is also an act of grace. These are just small samples of the power of grace as it silently maneuvers through our everyday thoughts, inspiring us to take action that always has the healing or betterment of someone else's life or our own. So we always live in the field of grace. Of course, we might be unaware that we are drawing on it as often as we do. Grace, in all its many expressions, has the power to enhance a quality in us because we need that quality. Patience, for example, expands within you into the grace of endurance, giving you the strength to sustain yourself through what you would ordinarily consider an unendurable situation. Our ordinary thinking expands into the grace of discernment, providing us with the capacity to maneuver more carefully through a decision. Though invisible and quiet holy resources, grace and guidance flow continually into our lives. So it's a substance that comes when we need it in ways we will never imagine, and 99% in ways we will never see, but it's always, always there. Grace, it's the thing that gets mothers to lift cars off their children. It's the power that brings life into being. All the other powers are puny. And we all, somewhere in our heart, in our spirit, we know this. We know that it's not us in life, but that we are the divine. We are the mystery pouring through us. It's what we are. And the more we open ourselves to the ways of the sacred, the more we'll experience the wonders of grace, guidance, and miracles in our life. The way we perceive the ordinary world shifts because nothing can look ordinary again. When we are aware of the presence or absence of grace, we can never ever look upon any challenge or any problem in our life as insurmountable. As we learn to rely on grace, drawing on it as a primary resource within our thoughts and actions. And for someone who knows what it is to rely upon grace, the only realistic choice becomes the most unrealistic one. The choice to defy gravity by turning to our inner resources in combination with external abilities. And this, in my view, is the true description of the whole human being. I'd like to end with this thought, to look at our incarnation, this human incarnation, and see it actually as a school, as an education of the heart, as a place to remember who we are. And don't go away anywhere, but just stay where we are. Take the measure of what's given to us. It's our curriculum. It's our grace. It's our place to awaken the great heart of compassion, the great heart of love. Let's practice. So sit comfortably where you can, be at ease. You may close your eyes or lower your gaze, just whatever feels right to you. And let's just begin by taking 3 intentional deep breaths. Taking a deep breath in and releasing. Breathing in the aliveness of this moment. And releasing any tension you're carrying with the exhalation. And one more time, breathing in and releasing. And now letting your attention drop down from the head where it's usually lodged, and just like a falling leaf, letting your attention drop gently down into the body. Feeling the neck, dropping your shoulders, relaxing the arms and hands, appreciating the back that can hold us up. The whole sensitive, vulnerable front of the body. Bringing awareness to the stability of your hips and bottom. Of the legs and feet. Just sensing and feeling this mysterious aliveness that you are. And just noticing, being mindful, noticing if there's any edgy feeling in some part of the body. Maybe in your solar plexus, the hollow below your sternum. Is there any tension in the jaw? Tightness in your neck, your shoulders? Any slight pressure anywhere? And letting the attention rest in the movement of the breath. And feeling the movement of the breath in the body. trusting that each breath will be followed by another one. Allowing your body to breathe out. To take its time and breathe in. For as long as we are alive, this body will breathe in. And then noticing the arising, the beginning of a breath. Seeing if you can keep that breath company with your attentiveness. With each breath being born, staying with it as it has its being, and then gently vanishes. And maybe you can notice that slight pause, that moment, that fleeting moment of stillness, where one breath passes away and the next breath is born. Trusting this process and noticing how every aspect has a gentle, easeful quality. The breath in and out. The pause between the breaths. and noticing how you already know how to be at ease with all these changes of breathing. In breath, out breath. Soothing, refreshing, emptying, and filling up. Each breath, each moment being born, arising, and passing away. In this great space, great openness of heart and mind. And sensing and feeling in the stability and presence of your body. The flow of breath in the body. A sense of deep security, deep safety that comes from not having to do anything to make this happen or create it. But simply being held by a process that you can trust. This process of being alive that carries you, that carries us. You can relax into it. Just trusting something here, something benevolent that can carry you. And hold you softly the profound, this profound benevolence of being safe and loved. This is safeness that you can trust. That you are held in the arms of aliveness, in the embrace of the cosmos. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And I'd like all of us to do something which is one of my favorite things to do, a heart hug. So I want you to take your hands and put them under your armpits, below the arm crease. And just give yourselves a heart hug. And I'm sending you all the warmth from my heart. And with that, I wish you grace. May the power of grace transform your life in endless and blessed ways. Namaste.